Welcome to our 30-day deep dive. It's going to be all about FDA drug development.
FDA drug development for a whole month.
For a whole month, we're going to cover how new drugs come to market. All that research, the regulations, the hurdles.
And those life-changing therapies, that's the goal, right?
Exactly. And to really dig into all of this.
Make it real.
Yeah. We'll be focusing on cannabis and psychedelic drug development.
Those are hot topics, really pushing boundaries.
They are, and they're changing how we think about science, medicine, even society.
Big picture stuff.
Yeah, but I know this can sound a little intimidating. FDA regulations. Trade development.
Like a whole other language.
It is. But that's why we're doing this deep dive. We'll cut through the noise and focus on what matters.
The key issues.
Right. So today, think of it as laying the groundwork. We'll cover those major themes, cGMP, ICH guidelines, quality by design.
Label accuracy.
Right. And the impact of new drug approvals.
Societal impact.
Big one.
Absolutely. It's like setting the stage.
Before the main act. Exactly.
Yeah.
But, and here's the thing, this isn't a straight line. Our journey is more of a spiral.
A spiral. Okay.
Yeah, so we'll keep coming back to what we know about cannabinoid and psychedelic science.
Yeah.
And as we learn about the FDA, it all builds together.
By the end, you'll know the what and the why.
Exactly. So, ready to dive in?
Let's do it. I think we should start with the big one.
The FDA.
Yeah, the FDA. People have strong feelings. Gatekeepers, bureaucratic.
Source of hope.
And frustration, definitely. But their main mission, it's about protecting public health.
Safety, efficacy, security of drugs.
That's it. And with cannabis and psychedelics, substances that have, well, let's be honest, they have baggage.
Decades of it.
Decades of stigma and misinformation. And they have potential, but also risks.
Huge potential.
So the FDA has to walk that line carefully.
Right. And how do they actually make sure a drug is safe and effective?
Regulations and guidelines, that's the starting point.
Right. In our prep, we saw this term cGMP. Sounds pretty technical.
It stands for Current Good Manufacturing Practices. They're like the foundation of pharmaceutical quality.
Foundation, okay.
These regulations, the FDA enforces them. Of course, they make sure that drug production is consistent.
Controlled, high standards.
Strict quality standards, yeah. Think about it. You wouldn't want your medicine made in some, dusty basement, right?
FDA equipment.
Exactly. cGMP makes sure facilities are clean, the equipment is calibrated.
Every step documented and validated.
You got it.
So it's all about minimizing contamination errors.
Inconsistencies. We want that final product to be reliable.
Especially for substances like cannabis and psychedelics.
Especially those, yeah. Public trust is huge.
Absolutely. So demonstrating these quality standards, that's key.
It's about satisfying the FDA, sure, but also reassuring everyone, patients, healthcare providers.
These products are safe, reliable, and labeled accurately. Speaking of which, how do we make sure the label actually reflects what's in these products? Especially with cannabis and psychedelics, they're so complex.
That's a really good point. It's not as simple as it sounds. Let's take cannabis. Hundreds of compounds, ratios change depending on the strain, how it's grown.
It's got to be on the label, though. THC, CBD, the whole profile.
For safety, for efficacy, that label has to be accurate.
And with psychedelics, the effects are so potent.
Potent, and you need precise dosing. A tiny variation can change everything.
Really change the experience.
Absolutely. Accurate labeling for psychedelics, it's about dosage, yes, but also informing patients about the effects. Psychological, physiological, it's all got to be clear.
For informed consent, risk mitigation.
Imagine having psychedelic therapy without knowing the dose or the potential effects.
That's a recipe for disaster.
So label accuracy, it's a cornerstone. Responsible and ethical development.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've got cGMPs for high-quality manufacturing, accurate labels for transparency. What else is there when we're talking about getting a new drug to market?
Well, on a global scale, we have the ICH guidelines.
ICH guidelines.
International Council for Harmonization of Technical Requirements for Pharmaceuticals for Human Use.
That's a mouthful.
It is. But basically, it's a set of international standards for pharmaceutical development, for registration.
So it's like a global framework.
A unified framework, yeah. This is important for cannabis and psychedelic therapies because research and trials are happening all over the world now.
So these guidelines help with consistency.
Consistency and collaboration. Researchers, agencies, different countries working together.
Streamlines the process, avoids duplicated effort.
Exactly. And a drug developed in one country, tested there, can be submitted for approval in another more easily,
So it speeds up the process.
getting those life-changing therapies to patients all over.
Okay, that makes sense. So cGMP, ICH guidelines, accurate labeling, and then there's this quality by design. Seems pretty straightforward.
It does, but there's more to it. Quality by design, QBD, it's a proactive approach.
Proactive, okay.
It's about understanding and controlling the manufacturing process for consistent quality. Instead of testing at the end, you're identifying and managing things that can impact the final product.
Building quality in from the ground up.
Exactly, from reactive testing to proactive prevention. And for cannabis and psychedelics, where standardization is so important,
Consistency is everything.
QBD is a powerful tool.
Right. But even with all of this, how does the FDA actually determine if a drug is safe and effective? They don't just take the manufacturer's word for it, right?
Of course not. There's a rigorous process, multiple stages. It starts with preclinical studies.
Preclinical, so before it reaches humans.
Right. Researchers test in the lab with animals.
To check for safety, efficacy.
The basics, yeah. And if the drug looks good, then it moves to clinical trials.
So that's testing in human volunteers.
Exactly. And those trials usually have 3 phases. Phase 1 is small, focusing on safety and dosage.
Small scale.
Phase 2, larger group, looking at efficacy, potential side effects.
And phase 3.
Large scale, very rigorous. That's where we get the most definitive evidence.
So it's a step-by-step process, each phase building on the last.
Exactly. And the FDA is watching the data the whole time, making sure the research is ethical and meets their standards.
So it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Absolutely. Bringing a new drug to market, it's complex, time-consuming, expensive, years, even decades sometimes.
So many people involved.
Countless researchers, clinicians, regulators.
Right, but we've been talking a lot about science and regulations. What about the patients? The ones waiting for these treatments? How do their voices get heard?
That's a critical part. Patient advocacy groups, they raise awareness, advocate for research funding, and they make sure the patient's perspective is considered.
So they're a driving force.
They share their stories, their struggles, their hopes. They remind us why this is so important. They pushed for innovation.
Behind the science and regulations are real people.
And their lives are impacted by the FDA's decisions.
Okay, before we move on to cannabinoids, I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier, societal impact of new drug approvals.
Yeah, that's particularly important for cannabis and psychedelics, right?
I think so. They're so culturally loaded.
They could disrupt some pretty deeply ingrained norms.
Big time.
We're talking about access, affordability, potential misuse, and how the public sees these substances.
Challenging beliefs, shifting paradigms, how we think about mental health and well-being.
It's multifaceted.
Definitely. And as we go deeper, we have to remember there are no easy answers.
No easy answers.
We need dialogue. We have to weigh the benefits and risks.
And approach these new therapies with responsibility and nuance.
So today, we've laid some groundwork. We've looked at the basics of FDA drug development,
cGMP, ICH guidelines, quality by design, label accuracy, the impact on society.
and the drug approval process itself, the importance of patient advocacy, the changing cultural landscape.
All shaping the future of cannabis and psychedelic medicine.
And this is just the start. Over the next 29 days, we'll keep going deeper, looking at specific drug development examples, clinical trial designs.
The ethical and societal implications.
It's going to get interesting.
It is. Stay tuned. Okay, so cannabinoids. It's time to talk about cannabinoids.
Yeah, let's get into it.
They've been getting a lot of attention lately. Researchers, the public, everyone's interested.
For good reason. Their therapeutic potential is huge.
Huge, yeah. But to be honest, I find it all a bit overwhelming sometimes.
Me too. There's so much to learn. CBD, THC, receptors, enzymes. It's like a whole new language.
It is. It's a whole system. The endocannabinoid system, or ECS, that's where we need to start. It's a network of receptors, enzymes, neurotransmitters, and it's already in our bodies, naturally.
Okay, slow down for a sec. Receptors, neurotransmitters. Are we back in biology class?
Uh-huh. I know, it's complex. Think of your body as a city, and the ECS is like the traffic control system. It keeps everything running smoothly.
Mood, sleep, appetite, pain, all that.
All of that, yeah. It's about maintaining balance.
Keeping things in harmony.
Exactly. And that's where cannabinoids come in. They interact with the ECS. They can enhance or modulate those functions.
You mentioned receptors. What are those exactly?
Think of them like locks on the surface of cells. And cannabinoids are the keys.
Okay, I like that. Keys and locks.
When a cannabinoid binds to a receptor, it triggers things, cellular events, signals.
Sending messages that affect different processes in the body.
Precisely. And there are two main types, CB1 and CB2. CB1 are mostly in the brain, the central nervous system,
And CB2.
more in the immune cells and peripheral tissues.
Gotcha. And that's where THC and CBD come in, right? Those are the two everyone talks about.
You're right on track. THC, that's tetrahydrocannabinol, the psychoactive one, the one that gets you high. It binds mainly to those CB1 receptors in the brain.
So mood, perception, coordination, all affected by THC.
Exactly. What about CBD?
CBD, that's cannabidiol, right?
Right. It's different. It interacts with both CB1 and CB2 receptors, but it's not psychoactive.
No.
Nope. But it has other therapeutic effects, like reducing anxiety and inflammation.
So THC is like the party animal. CBD is more laid back.
Uh-huh. That's a good way to put it. Now, remember those enzymes we talked about? They work behind the scenes, regulating the levels of endocannabinoids. Those are the cannabinoids our bodies produce naturally.
Right, the cleanup crew, making sure everything runs smoothly.
Exactly. And we can target those enzymes. That could be a new way to develop drugs.
So instead of adding THC or CBD from outside, we could tweak our own system.
Exactly. Manipulate the levels of specific endocannabinoids to get the therapeutic effect we want.
That's incredible.
It really shows the potential of this research, working with the body's natural systems.
We talked about THC binding to those CB1 receptors in the brain. How does that actually get us high? What's going on in the cells?
It's all about how neurons communicate. They use these signals, electrical and chemical.
Right, brain cells talking to each other.
And THC, when it binds to CB1, it disrupts those signals, changes the brain activity patterns.
Throws a wrench in the works.
In a way, yes. Sensory perception, mood, memory, coordination, it can all be affected. That's why high doses of THC can be disorienting.
Impaired judgment, slow reaction.
Exactly. So the challenge is, how do we use THC therapeutically without those side effects?
That's a tough one.
Researchers are working on it. Precise dosing, targeted delivery systems, even developing new cannabinoids that aren't so psychoactive.
Finding that balance between benefits and risks.
Absolutely. And as we understand the ECL better, we'll get better at developing those therapies, maximizing the good, minimizing the bad.
Okay, let me make sure I've got this straight. Two main receptors, CB1 and CB2, THC and CBD bind to them in different ways, different effects. And we've got enzymes regulating our own endocannabinoids.
You got it. It's a complex dance. Molecules, receptors, enzymes.
A whole symphony of effects.
That's a great way to put it.
Now, in our research, we came across this term entourage effect.
Mm-hmm.
What is that, and why is everyone so excited about it?
The entourage effect, it's the idea that the different compounds in cannabis, they work together synergistically.
The whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Exactly. It's not just THC or CBD on their own. It's all the cannabinoids, terpenes, flavonoids, everything working together.
That's pretty different from how we usually develop drugs, isolating a single compound.
It is, and it suggests we might be missing out on some therapeutic benefits by focusing on just one molecule.
Interesting, but that must make it hard to standardize these products, right?
It's very hard. How do you standardize something when the synergy between the parts is so important? It's a big challenge for researchers and regulators.
They're figuring it out, though, right? Bringing safe and effective cannabis-based therapies to market.
They are. It's a process.
So where do we go from here? What are the most promising areas of research for cannabinoids?
The field is exploding right now. Lots of promising results. Pain management, for example, especially chronic pain, neuropathic pain.
That's huge, especially for people who don't get relief from regular painkillers.
Absolutely. And there's research on spasticity in multiple sclerosis, reducing nausea from chemo, even improving appetite in HIV/AIDS patients.
So many different applications.
And we're just getting started. CBD for epilepsy is another big one, especially in kids with severe epilepsy that doesn't respond to other treatments.
It's amazing to think something from cannabis could help those kids.
It really shows how powerful these therapies can be. Still lots of research to do, but the early results are very encouraging.
It feels like a new era of medicine is beginning.
I agree. It's a rapidly changing field. Lots of challenges, lots of opportunities, but the future is bright.
And the FDA is going to be a big part of that future.
Absolutely.
Okay, we've covered a lot today. The endocannabinoid system, therapeutic uses, receptors, enzymes, the entourage effect.
And standardization. Don't forget standardization.
Right, of course. It's complex, but so promising. Now, I'm ready to move on to another frontier.
Psychedelics.
Psychedelic. They've always had this mystique, haven't they? Ancient rituals, counterculture movements, a bit of fear even. But now they're being looked at as treatments for mental health conditions. It's exciting and a little bit scary too. So, psychedelics. Let's dive in. They've always been, well, mysterious.
Mystique is a good word.
Yeah, ancient rituals, counterculture, that touch of fear. But now it's different. Science is getting involved.
Looking at therapeutic benefits.
For real, it's a big change.
It is. These substances, they were demonized, pushed to the fringes, and now
Prestigious universities, research institutions.
it's remarkable.
What happened? What caused this shift?
A few things, I think. We're realizing that current mental health treatments have limitations.
They don't always work.
People struggle with depression, anxiety, PTSD. Conventional therapies, they don't always help long term.
Right. And at the same time, research into psychedelics is making a comeback.
Rigorous clinical trials, yeah. And the results are promising, very promising.
People overcoming trauma, changing negative thought patterns.
Profound personal growth, even.
It's a whole new paradigm for mental health.
Maybe it is. Addressing the root causes, not just the symptoms.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
So, back to basics. What exactly are psychedelics?
They're psychoactive substances. They change how we perceive things, our mood, our thought processes.
Under our consciousness.
Exactly. And they mainly work by interacting with serotonin receptors in the brain, specifically the 5-HT2A subtype.
Serotonin,
Ugh.
the feel-good neurotransmitter. So, are psychedelics just flooding our brains with serotonin?
Not quite. It's more about modulating the serotonin signaling in specific parts of the brain, specific circuits.
Like fine-tuning a radio.
That's a good analogy. Psychedelics tweak those serotonin pathways, and that's what leads to the changes in consciousness.
So it's targeted, not just increasing the overall amount of serotonin.
Exactly. And the effects, they depend on the substance, the dose, the person's brain chemistry, their psychology.
Everyone's different. Okay, let's talk about some specific psychedelics. Psilocybin, LSD, DMT.
Big names, yeah.
Can you give us a quick overview?
Sure. Psilocybin, that's the active compound in magic mushrooms. It's been studied a lot for depression, anxiety. The results are really encouraging.
I've seen those studies. Psilocybin combined with therapy, helping people work through trauma.
Breaking free from those negative thought patterns.
And it's amazing how a single experience can have such a lasting impact.
Right. But it has to be guided properly. Psilocybin can create this space for introspection, for emotional healing.
Processing those deep emotions, the experiences that are holding people back.
Exactly. Now, LSD, that's lysergic acid diethylamide.
Potent, long-lasting experiences.
It's been researched for addiction, cluster headaches. It seems to disrupt those dysfunctional brain activity patterns.
Which is why it might help with those conditions. It's incredible. A substance that was demonized, now it might hold the key to treating serious illnesses.
It's a shift in perspective for sure. And then there's DMT, dimethyltryptamine, powerful, found in plants, even in tiny amounts in our bodies.
Naturally occurring.
Yeah. DMT gives you intense but short experiences. Some people say they're mystical, spiritual even.
Those ineffable experiences.
Yeah.
Hard to describe.
Researchers are looking at DMT for depression, anxiety. Some even think it could help us understand consciousness itself.
Big questions. But we have to talk about the risks too. Bad trips, flashbacks, long-term effects.
You're right. Psychedelics are powerful. They need to be treated with respect.
Like any powerful tool, they can be misused.
Exactly. So how do we make sure the experiences are safe and beneficial? Careful screening, responsible dosing, and intentions matter.
Intention is key. It's not about recreation, it's about healing and growth.
Right, and then there's set and setting. The person's mindset going in, their expectations, their emotional state, that's the set.
And setting.
The environment, where the experience happens, the people around them, both are crucial for how the journey unfolds.
So it's about creating a safe space.
A supportive container, yes. Experienced guides, a comfortable setting, clear intentions, that can really reduce the risk of a difficult experience.
And what about afterwards? How do we make sure the insights from these experiences stick, lead to real change?
That's where integration comes in. Making sense of the experience, applying those insights to your life, therapy, journaling, practices that help ground those experiences.
So it's not just about the trip itself, it's about what you do with it afterwards.
That's how you get the lasting benefits. Integration is key.
Okay, so much potential. But what about the future of psychedelic medicine? What are the hurdles, the opportunities?
Regulation is a big one. In the U.S., psychedelics are Schedule 1, high potential for abuse, no accepted medical use.
That's a problem for research.
It makes it hard, expensive. We need policy reform.
To open the doors for more research, more clinical trials.
Exactly. There's progress, though. Denver, Oakland, they're decriminalizing some psychedelics, and MAPS is working on FDA approval for MDMA-assisted therapy for PTSD.
That's good news. But even with regulation, there's still public perception to deal with.
It's a big one. Psychedelics have this stigma, these misconceptions. We need to educate people about the potential benefits, the risks, how they can be used therapeutically.
Build trust and acceptance.
It's crucial. We're at a turning point. More research, a growing community, the culture is changing.
It's exciting, but we need to be careful too. Enthusiasm is great, but caution is important.
Absolutely. Safety first, ethical considerations, respecting the power of these substances, always.
This has been an amazing journey. We've covered so much: FDA drug development, the regulations, the science of cannabinoids and psychedelics, the challenges, the impact on society. And this is just the beginning. Over the next 29 days, we're going deeper. Specific examples, clinical trials, the ethics, the big questions. So join us. It's going to be enlightening, thought-provoking, and hopefully it'll change the way you think about these groundbreaking new therapies